Chapter 10. A deafening crash made me jump. I heard a man scream. It forced me to open my eyes. I saw the green car and its front fender crushed against a light pole. "Mr. Phineas?" I heard his bark and saw him running down the middle of the street into the next block. The car had missed him. The big dog didn't even stop running. The passenger door swung open. A man in a dark suit staggered out, shaking his head. He gripped the top of the car as if holding himself up. "Sorry," I stammered as I ran past. He called out, but I kept running. I had to catch Mr. Phineas before he caused another accident. I took the dog out to prove how responsible I was, and now the dog caused an accident and I ran away. I knew I was in major trouble. And guess what? It got worse. "Mr. Phineas! Mr. Phineas!" I screamed at the dog. He finally slowed down. I guess he saw that the squirrel had escaped and he was chasing nothing. "Stop! Stop!" I was running hard, still half a block behind him. I gasped as a dark shadow rolled over me. I heard flapping wings, then another shadow swept past. It happened so fast, I didn't have a chance to scream or do anything. Gasping for breath, I stood and watched as two enormous buzzard hawks shot down from the sky. They swooped onto Mr. Phineas, squawking loudly, their huge black wings beating the air. The big dog swung his head around. Snarling, he bared his teeth and tried to snap at them. But the birds were too big, too powerful. Gripped with terror, I watched as they dug their talons into the fur on his back. They raised their heads and flapped their wings furiously, and started to lift Mr. Phineas off the ground. "No!" A howl burst from deep inside me. The buzzard hawks squawked and flapped. Mr. Phineas swung his head back and forth, struggling to free himself. They lifted him a foot off the ground. I took a running leap, dove forward, stretched out my arms to grab him away from them. Stretched, and missed. I landed hard on the pavement, skidded several feet on my stomach. It knocked the breath out. I wheezed and choked and struggled to force air into my lungs, and watched as the screaming, squawking monster birds flew off with Mr. Phineas. Chapter 11. Sucking in deep breaths of air, I forced myself to my feet. The huge birds cast wide shadows on the street as they flew away with my dog. The poor guy let out a howl of fright. My sneakers slapped the pavement as I ran after the birds. They were high above me, flapping their long black wings and pulling themselves higher. "Oh!" I stumbled over something. A large glass soda bottle. It rolled away from me toward the curb. Without stopping to think about it, I bent down and grabbed the bottle. I didn't have time to take aim or plan my throw. With a loud groan, I heaved the bottle into the air, heaved it at the squawking birds. I heard a hard thump. A buzzard hawk screamed. The birds flew apart and Mr. Phineas came sailing down. My heart did a flip-flop in my chest. I reached out my arms. He was falling fast. The dog's legs were thrashing the air, his tail tucked between his legs, too terrified to make a sound. I had to catch him. I had to. "Ow!" I cried out in pain as he crashed into my arms like a meteorite falling to the ground. I fell onto my back and he landed on my chest. In the sky, I saw the two buzzard hawks floating away. "Mr. Phineas, stop it! Come on, boys, stop!" Still on top of me, the big jerk began licking my face. "Please, stop!" I suddenly remembered the driver, the green car, the accident. In my attempt to rescue Mr. Phineas, I'd forgotten all about him. I grabbed the dog's leash and wrapped the end around my hand, raced back. "This is your fault, Mr. Phineas," I scolded as we ran. The dog wagged his tail a little harder. He didn't understand. I found the man in the dark suit still standing by the light pole. He had short brown hair parted in the middle, brown eyes, a small mustache, and a pointed chin. He was muttering to himself as he walked in a circle around the pole and his wrecked car. He didn't see me until I called out to him. "Are you okay?" He stopped circling and stared at me. "Malfunction," he shouted in a high, shrill voice. "Malfunction." I don't understand," I said. I stepped closer. Mr. Phineas sniffed the light pole. "Are you okay?" I repeated. "Malfunction," the man said. "Malfunction." Oh no, he must have hit his head. He just kept repeating that word. His eyes were glassy. He had no expression on his face at all. Malfunction, malfunction, malfunction. I didn't know what to do. He probably had a concussion or something. I glanced all around. No one else in sight. Malfunction, malfunction. I I'll get help, I stammered. I motioned with both hands. Stay here, okay? Do you want to sit down? I'm going to call for help. Malfunction, malfunction. His fingers were all moving at once, tapping the sides of his suit pants. Malfunction. I tugged Mr. Phineas away from the light pole. My plan was to hurry to the nearest house and ask them to call 911. Mr. Phineas tugged back. He wasn't finished sniffing the pole. I gave a hard yank on the leash and started to jog toward the small, square, red brick house on the corner. Malfunction, malfunction. I glanced back and saw the poor man circling his car again, muttering that word over and over. I'm in major trouble. I've never been in trouble this bad. Oh, well, actually I have, but this is pretty bad. I didn't see the car coming from behind until it pulled to a stop across the street from me. Is there a problem here? The voice startled me. I looked over and saw 2 blue uniformed police officers inside a black and white patrol car. I let out a sigh. Oh, thank goodness, I said. There's been an accident, I pointed. The 2 officers climbed quickly out of their car. They left the doors open and started toward me. I hurried back to the man circling the light pole. Malfunction, malfunction. I turned to the 2 cops. It wasn't my fault, really, I stammered. But their eyes narrowed as they came at me. Their shoulders tensed. They lowered their hands over their holsters, and they stared coldly at me as they moved in. Hey, I gasped. What are you going to do? Chapter 12. I staggered back until I bumped into the green car. Eyes narrowed coldly. The 2 cops kept coming. Wait, please, I pleaded. To my surprise, they walked right past me. They strode up to the man circling the light pole. Malfunction, he said. Malfunction. Yeah, we know, one of the cops said. They both grabbed the man. Each cop took a shoulder. Looking confused, the man swung his head from side to side. Malfunction, malfunction. The cops pushed him quickly to the patrol car. The man made no attempt to resist. He just kept moving his head back and forth and repeating that one word. They pushed him into the back seat of the car and slammed the door. A few seconds later, the car started up and they roared away. I stood there stunned. Mr. Phineas tugged at his leash. He sniffed the grass behind the damaged car. I could still hear the roar of the patrol car as it sped down the street. I'm in so much trouble, I told the dog. I was just trying to be responsible, and now look. I shook my head sadly. Mr. Phineas gazed up at me for a moment. Then he went back to his sniffing. That poor man, I thought. He's totally messed up. I promised I wouldn't get in trouble when we moved here, and now I was probably in the worst trouble of my life. I started to walk Mr. Phineas home. The sun was nearly down. We walked through long shadows. I couldn't stop thinking about the accident. Mr. Phineas loped along slowly, tired from his adventure. We passed a group of lawn gnomes standing at the bottom of a wide lawn. They all had 6 smiles on their faces, as if they knew what had happened to me, and they were grinning merrily about it. Don't let your imagine run away with you, Jay, I scolded myself. They are ugly little men molded out of plaster. Don't get crazy just because they have smiles painted on their faces. Mr. Phineas led the way onto our block. He started to pull on the leash. I guess he was eager to get home and have his dinner. A feeling of heavy dread fell over me. My stomach started to churn. I knew I had to tell my parents about the accident as soon as I got home. We passed another group of grinning lawn gnomes. I had my head down. My brain was spinning. Suddenly, I felt Mr. Phineas tug hard at his leash. I looked up and saw a fat gray cat slither across the street. Mr. Phineas let out a fierce bark and took off after the cat. The leash flew out of my hand. Barking ferociously, the big dog galloped down the street. "Oh, no!" I wailed. "Not again!" The street was empty. No cars coming toward us, but Mr. Phineas turned suddenly and, barking his head off, roared past a tall hedge and into a front yard. It took me a few seconds to recognize the house, and then I screamed my lungs out. "No, Mr. Phineas, no! Not McClatchy's yard! No! Not McClatchy!"